On today's show, the Houston Rockets dropped their second straight game to the LA Clippers. There were some improvements across the board, though, in this one for the Rockets. The silver linings, Alperen Sengun having a huge game before ultimately fouling out, and Jalen Green finally breaking out of his shooting slump with a gigantic third quarter performance. We're going to break down all of that and more coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
The Houston Rockets select Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
Every time I step on that floor, I'm coming.
You're getting somebody who's going to come in with a chip on their shoulder, somebody who's going to come in and compete from day one.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays, host of the State of the Rockets podcast, as well as Rockets Watch. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin, the show, of course, at Locked On Rockets, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, where you can help the show out tremendously by commenting whatever you want below the video. It helps out a ton. Go comment on the videos. I would sincerely appreciate it. Today's episode brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Still don't get to talk about a win for this Houston Rockets team, now falling to 1-8 on the young season. However, there were some improvements across the board in this Rockets game. Their second straight game against the LA Clippers. They ultimately dropped the game 109-101. We'll talk about overall game flow. We're going to talk about the huge night from Alperen Sengun, 26 and 13, a monstrous game from him before ultimately fouling out of this one. We'll talk about Jalen Green breaking out of his shooting slump, Usman Garuba's continued impact off of the Rockets bench, Tari Eason guarding anything and everything thrown in his path, all of that. But where we have to absolutely start is Alperen Sengun, because he had a monster game in this one. 26 points, 13 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, 8 of 13 shooting, only attempted 1 three-pointer, and was 10 of 11 at the free throw line, was living at the charity stripe. Had over half of the Rockets' free throw attempts by himself in this game. He is your Locked On Rockets player of the game in this one. I mean, he was all over the place. Now, look, we'll get to the defensive side of the ball here in a second, but offensively, a masterclass from Alp. He was good on rolls. He was receiving passes from guys like Jalen and KPJ. He even had this one moment where he was like posted up, elbow area of the floor, looking for, a post-up opportunity, or looking to pass actually at the elbow. And Eric Gordon comes over and like sets this screen for him. And Alp uses the screen. It's like an inverted 1-5, 2-5 pick and roll, whatever. Alp uses the screen and then posts up Reggie Jackson and spins on him, goes baseline and gets a turnaround layup at the rim. Just ridiculous. He had Zubac spinning left, right, and center, just absolutely put him in the spin cycle in this game. Had a highlight, I think it was just under or just over 6 minutes left in the game, where he comes spinning down, pick and roll, comes down the lane, and pump fakes, and Zubac just goes flying. Zubac was just Statue of Liberty, just posed, and Alp spun on him and easy lay-in at the rim. A really, really impactful game from Alperen Sengun, where even Steven Silas mentioned after the game that they were much more intentional in this game about getting him some designed plays and really kind of feeding him the ball based on how well he played last game. And that's both good and kind of frustrating here, because it's you kind of know that when he gets the touches, he's able to do this kind of stuff. So why not make him more of a feature every game? Why not why does it have to be a reward system you did all right last game, so we'll give you more touches this game? After this game, 26 and 13 in 33 minutes of run. Got to the free throw line a ton, had Zubac in foul trouble for portions of this game. At that point, you've got to make him a staple of the offense every single night, right? Our very last episode with weekly co-host Ben Dubose. We talked about it at length. Alperen Sengun makes life easier for the other guys on this roster. The assist count was a little low by Alp in this game, just 2 assists on the night. But one thing that really stood out in this game, right? I mentioned the 1 3-point attempt earlier that he missed, so 0 of 1 from 3. But the thing that really stood out is defenses aren't checking Alp at the perimeter, right? They're not running out. They're not guarding him at the perimeter. So how do you still take advantage of the defense in that case? Alp did a fantastic job in this game of kind of baiting the defense into thinking he was going to shoot the 3 and then making something happen off the dribble once the defense started to close out on him, right? He had that one play late in the game in the fourth quarter where he caught the ball in the corner, stepped it out like he was going to shoot the 3, and then faked the 3 and drove in and finished for 2 at the rim. He had a couple other plays throughout this game where he kind of faked like he was going to shoot the 3 and then drove the ball in and would kick it to the corner or kick it to another guy on the wing and just kind of getting the defense in rotation. So rather than settling for those 3s, which, in this game, Alp could have had 3 or 4 more, wide open 3-pointers, and he could have settled for those, and he might have hit, a couple of them. And there's always the possibility, right, that he has a chance to go, 2 for 4, 2 for 5, and you're like, all right, that's a good night. But the way that he's able to generate some offensive opportunities by not settling for those 3s, right? Because at this point, he's not a good 3-point shooter. You don't want to see him settle for those 3s. I am firmly in the camp that not every wide open 3-pointer or not every wide open shot is a good shot, right? If you've got Alp or Usman Garuba or to a lesser extent, maybe Tari Eason, although Tari's a better 3-point shooter than those 2 guys, at least eye test. I mean, you don't want those guys taking all the wide open 3-point shots in the world. Jae'Sean Tate, another one, because defenses know that those are not great shooters, right? Defenses will concede 3-point shots to those guys. So I thought Alp did a fantastic job of orchestrating offensive opportunities out of this game, finding opportunities where he could, play his game, where he could post up, where he could be at the elbow, where he could attack off the perimeter. Did a good job in dribble handoff sets, was setting good hard screens for both Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, other guys on the team. There were moments, especially in that third quarter where Jalen Green caught fire and started and finally broke out of his shooting slump, which was a very welcome sight to see, where Alp had some great screens, those little through the 5-hole passes that he dishes, as somebody is running into what is, this brick wall of a screen that he sets. Defensively, I do think that the Rockets need to try and figure something out defensively, because it worked to an extent where, Alp, when he was checking Zubats, looked okay for stretches, but then there were moments where you get Alp and he's, having to guard, Morris in the pick and roll, or he's or they've got, Batum out there, or even Moses Brown was out there and his size was kind of bothersome at times offensively for the Rockets, and even on the offensive glass, had 3 offensive rebounds in this game. So, it's one of those where there is some give and take, but when you have Alp performing this well offensively, you kind of live with whatever issues you may or may not have on the defensive side of things. And even then, I don't think Alp was, necessarily bad defensively in this game. In fact, I think he did a really good job boxing out, closing out defensive possessions strong. Again, the 13 rebounds was really impressive. There were a lot of possessions where he was fighting, right? Fighting with Zubats, fighting with Moses Brown, guys that are so much bigger than him, and boxing them out successfully, keeping them off the glass. The Rockets actually won the rebounding battle in this game against Clippers 50-43. And one of the other stats from this game that really did stand out was the second chance points in this one, which Alp was a part of that, Garuba was a part of that, Tari Eason was a part of that. 16-2, a plus 14 in the second chance points opportunity for the Rockets in this game. So Alp having an absolutely monstrous night. It was great to hear that Steven Silas made it a point to try and get him some more touches, to try to get him some more reps in this game. Coming up, do want to talk about a little bit of the actual game flow, as well as Jalen Green kind of breaking out of his shooting slump, the contributions from Usman Garuba and Tari Eason off the Rockets bench, the run in the second quarter that got the Rockets back into this game after trailing by as many as 18. We're going to get there after a quick message from our friends over at Prize Picks. Next game, I'm taking Jalen Green over 23.5 points. How about Alperen Sengun over 9.5 rebounds? Let's set the bar not super high. Kevin Porter Jr. less than 4.5 turnovers. So what is Prize Picks, right? How does it work? You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projections, you can win up to 10 times back on your money on any single entry that you submit. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. That's NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, you name it. They've got you covered over at Prize Picks. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that simple. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, let's talk a little bit. So this game, I mean, you play the same team back to back, and this Rockets team came out of the gate and they looked flat. They looked flat right out of the gate. The starters did not have it early in that first quarter. At one point, they trailed this game 23-5. Like, it was embarrassing. And then the Rockets mounted their comeback, and shout out to the Rockets bench unit for coming in and providing the spark that was much needed to actually get back into this game. Garuba, KJ Martin, Tari Eason, Jae'Sean, and then Kevin Porter Jr. as part of that bench unit, part of the secondary unit into the first quarter, start of the second, where they fought their way back into this game. Garuba and Eason provided a much-needed spark during that run. Garuba continues to impress with his play in limited minutes. Just 12 minutes of running this game, had 6 points, 6 boards, 1 assist, 2 steals, 3 of 5 shooting in the minutes that he was on the floor. Had a nice little roll and a feed from Kevin Porter Jr. Got to the free throw line, missed the free throw, unfortunately. But just a really impactful game from Usman Garuba in the minutes that he had. And then Tari Eason, same deal. Tari Eason felt like he guarded everybody this game. Felt like he was, he had possessions on Paul George, had possessions on Marcus Morris, had possessions where he was, switched onto Zubats or on Batum. He was guarding everybody on the Clippers this game and doing a pretty solid job of it across the board. He had 6 points, 7 boards, 3 of them were offensive rebounds, had 2 assists, had a steal, had 3 blocks in this game. I mean, Tari was everywhere. And the offensive rebounds that this Rockets team managed to generate, right? I mean, they had 16 offensive boards. Alp had 3 of them. KPJ had 3 of them. Garuba had 4. Tari Eason had 3. I joked at one point during the game that Tari Eason could find an offensive rebound blindfolded in a snowstorm. Like, he's just got that nose for the ball. He's able to track him down. But the Rockets turned things around after being down by as many as 18 in this game. They really fought back in, and Kevin Porter Jr. was a big part of that, right? The bench guys had their contributions. Jae'Sean managed to shoot 4 of 6 from three-point land in this game and had a couple big threes early to kind of give the Rockets a little needed momentum juice off the bench after that first batch of substitutions to try and get them back into the game. And KPJ he basically kind of took things over, into the first quarter, beginning of the second, was just flowing, was playing really, really well. And he actually, I want to make sure I have the numbers here right, because it was kind of, for KPJ, it was kind of like a tale of two halves, right? Where KPJ had a really, really strong first half, especially as part of that Rockets comeback. In the first half, KPJ was 4 of 9 from the floor, had 12 points, had 3 rebounds, had 5 assists, had a steal, just a couple turnovers. He was a +5 when all the other Rocket starters were in the negatives because he was part of that run to get back into the game. At one point when the Rockets brought the score back, I believe it was 40-39 at one point in the second quarter. KPJ was a +12 during that run before he went and got his breather and then came back in to close things out in the half. I mean, KPJ was phenomenal during that stretch. Really, 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 really solid. Feeding guys, getting to his spots, hitting shots, getting mismatches, getting to, the little 15-foot range, just on the edges of the paint, getting to his little pull-up midi, all that stuff. KPJ was great. And then the second half was not so hot. Especially the fourth quarter from KPJ. That's when things started to kind of really fall apart in this game. The Rockets at one point, they were kind of right there with the Clippers, just ahead of them, like a 2-possession game for most of the fourth quarter. And then the Rockets, had it cut down to 7 at one point, and PG goes in, slices through the Rockets defense, hits a layup, scores up to, lead is up to 9 for the Clippers. And then Kevin Porter Jr. comes up the court, lazy pass, gets picked off, Clippers hit a 3, and we're looking at a 12-point deficit with, I think it was like about 3 minutes left to go in the game. But KPJ in the fourth quarter, just 2 of 5 shooting from the floor. He had 3 turnovers. The second half was not great from KPJ, especially compared to how well he played in the first half. But the Rockets had chances late in this game to try and close things out. Alperen Sengun was not able to be on the floor in the closing moments. He fouled out of this game, went out to a loud cheer from the Toyota Center crowd when he did exit the game. Usman Garuba wound up closing things out for this team. There was a play, with less than 60 seconds to go where the Rockets were down 6. KJ Martin drives the ball in, has a chance to feed it to Usman Garuba, kicks the pass to him, and Garuba just, unable to corral the pass. He had a wide open dunk. He was cutting in from the baseline, had a wide open dunk. If he had caught the pass, it would have been a 4-point game with a little over, I think, 30 seconds left to play. Rockets would have been in a, probably not in a great position to try and win the game, but right, you put the onus on the Clippers to hit their free throws to close the game out strong. Maybe the Rockets make something happen. They had chances in this game. They were right there with the Clippers. Some sloppy play here and there in that fourth quarter kind of prevented the Rockets from ultimately, being able to run away, or not run away, but being able to take this one back and get some revenge on the Clippers for, losing in LA Monday night. Jalen Green, who had a really strong performance of his own right, 22 points, 9 of 17, 3 of 8 from long distance, only got to the free throw line once, did hit it, had 4 boards, had an assist, had a steal, had 3 turnovers, was a minus 13 on the evening, but it was great to see Jalen actually break out of the shooting slump. That was the important thing from this game. He had 14 points in the third quarter, including a pair of back-to-back threes. He hit a couple floaters this game. He had one really early on, like to open the game. I think it was the very first set of points on the board for the Rockets, if I'm not mistaken. He had another floater later in the second half that may or may not have been intentional. It went off the glass. It went in. But it does look like he's maybe kind of working on that part of his game, being able to have something to go to other than that mid-range shot. He had one moment where in the third, somewhere around the 2 threes that he had a moment where he got run off the 3-point line and he took a very quick one dribble pull up, and it was like the cleanest, most on balance mid-range pull-up that I've seen him take in a I don't know how many games, a handful of games, basically since the slump started, because it feels like he's so constantly off balance when he's shooting his middies, where he's just, he explodes, he has that quick first step, gets to the mid-range, beats his defender, but then he's just, he's tilted, or he's not, shoulders aren't squared up or whatever when he goes up for the shot. And I feel like that's definitely messing with his rhythm, his ability to convert on those mid-range shots. So when I saw him on the 3-point line, take that one dribble in, elevate immediately from like 18 feet and drain the jumper, it looked clean. It looked good. It looked like he took the shot in rhythm, all of that. So a really clean game from Jalen, a much needed game from Jalen, and hopefully something that he can build on moving forward. And the Rockets ran that same action again, the one that they ran for one of Jalen's only 4 buckets in the first meetup against the Clippers. They ran that same action between him and Alperen Sengun again this game. It wound up not resulting in a bucket. I think Jalen got held on the play. He got tripped up and fell down. So it didn't result in free throws or anything, but it was just cool to see them kind of go back to some of the actions that have worked previously, right? Where you can run some things through Alperen Sengun. And I think that needs to be the biggest takeaway from this game, is the Rockets looked really, really good running their offense through Alperen Sengun for majority stretches of this game. And they were very much in this one. You need to see a little bit more, shot conversion, I guess, from some of the opportunities that Alp kind of created for guys in this game. Like Alp had a post up in this game where he was posting up and he whipped the pass to the corner to Jalen Green, and Jalen, missed the corner 3-pointer. So there are opportunities like that where the Rockets are generating good, high quality looks and they're just not quite capitalizing on them. So those are kind of, frustrating to see when they do materialize. You're like, oh, this is a great shot, and it doesn't go in. You're like, damn it. But the Clippers managed to, have a much better game than the first time these two teams played. The Clippers managed to actually shoot a decent average from 3. They went through the first 7 minutes of the game without attempting a single 3-pointer. And I wonder if that was, very intentional based on how poorly they shot the ball last game. But they wound up shooting 36.5% from 3-point land in this game. They had a lot some more contributions from across the board. Marcus Morris had a better game. Paul George, not quite as big of a game as he did in the game prior, and then just better overall bench contributions from this one for the Clippers from this night out. But again, 109-101 loss for the Rockets. They fall to 1-8 on the season. The silver linings from this game, again, Alperen Sengun, huge game. Jalen Green breaking out of his shooting slump. Those are the two biggest positives from this game. Coming up, do want to kind of circle back and mention again Garuba, Tari, Eason, their impact, how important they've been. Jabari Smith Jr., do want to talk about his game as well, the fact that he left the game early after taking a hard spill. Also, we're going to run back a clip from Stephen Silas pregame that actually ruffled the feathers of some Rockets fans, and I'll share some thoughts on that. We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, last couple things here that I wanted to talk about from this game, and then we'll run that clip from Stephen Silas pregame that had Rockets fans feeling some kind of way. And I've got thoughts on it as well, talking about the importance of Eric Gordon to this Rockets team. That was the context of the quote from Stephen Silas. Just very quickly here, I know I talked about him already, Garuba, Tari, Eason. I really feel like those two guys are kind of establishing this almost like wrecking ball kind of mentality, energy, whatever, that is infectious on that second unit. We've seen it in a couple games now, back-to-back games against this Clippers squad, where the second unit is able to kind of spark some energy, right, that wasn't there. And Garuba does that, Eason does that, and seeing those two guys be able to kind of check in tandem and have those opportunities to really jumpstart things for this Rockets team, it's nice to see. I was discussing this with a couple other media guys at the game, and nobody knew off the top of their head. So let me know in the YouTube comments if you're aware of this. But I'm sure there had to have been like a name for like a nickname for a player or something in NBA history, like the garbage man or like the custodian or something like that I'm just not thinking of off the top of my head. But I want to have like a nickname for Garuba and Tari Eason, like when they check into the game together, like the cleanup crew or the custodians or the garbage men or whatever, because they just do the dirty work, right? They come in and they make things happen for this Rockets team. So I hate forcing nicknames, but at the same time, like I feel like they deserve something, right? Just that tandem duo off the Rockets bench. So Eric Gordon also, shifting gears here. Eric Gordon, an uncharacteristically bad game from Eric Gordon. 0-4 from the floor, missed all three of his three-pointers, had a couple rebounds, had a couple of assists, had a steal, had a block, but just a really, really weird night from EG. Like just, I don't know if he was like purposely not taking shots or what. I don't know if he, after the fan backlash on him, attempting, the two possessions to try and tie things up against the Clippers in LA. I don't know if he's just like, fine, I won't shoot the basketball. Like, who knows what it is. But just an uncharacteristic night from EG. Very, very weird evening from him. And then the last guy here, Jabari Smith Jr., who this was probably Jabari's worst game. I mean, I'd have to go back and really compare, but I mean, 1 of 10 from the floor, missed all 5 of his threes, had 4 rebounds, had a block, had a couple fouls, didn't look great defensively, looked a little, he's, throughout this early part of the season, at times he's looked a little stiff, right, when he plays. He doesn't look, I don't want to say he doesn't look ready. The Rockets, it definitely feels like they are doing a better job of getting him into some spots where he can be effective, but I think he's kind of like slumping at the same time, right? Like we saw Jalen struggle to start last season, and then he really figured it out, picked it up and got going, and things looked fantastic for like the final 49 games of the season. But he struggled right out of the gate. And I think we're seeing some of those same struggles with Jabari, right? Adjusting to the speed of the NBA, adjusting to kind of learning where to pick and choose his spots within the offense. Some of the threes that he takes feel really forced. Some of the opens ones that he gets, he's just not converting on. The Rockets did do a good job of getting him the ball twice at the elbow in this game, which I thought was nice. And he hit one of them. It was his only shot that he hit in the entire game. But it was nice to see them give him some opportunities where he could get the ball in areas that were familiar to him, right? We haven't seen them do that at all this season, like giving him the ball at the elbow and just kind of letting him operate. So that was nice to see. Ultimately, he left the game early. He took a spill. It looked like, kind of going for like an offensive rebound, landed funny, kind of got up gingerly, was walking around, limping a little bit, and then got checked out of the game. We didn't get an update on him post-game. I hope everything's all right with him, but given the fact that ankle kept him out of the remainder of preseason, I don't know if it was the exact same ankle. I would need to go back and double check, but I would imagine that we might actually wind up seeing Jabari Smith Jr. miss a little bit of time since he didn't check back into this game and since the Rockets closed things out without him out there. I wish him all the best. Speedy recovery, but this could be, right, if he does miss some time to the ankle, silver lining, right? We saw this happen last year. Jalen missed time due to the hamstring. He missed all those games, and then he came back, and he was completely different after coming back, right? He was able to sit down, really look at some film, really understand the areas that he wasn't taking advantage of, and things kind of slowed down for him. So if Jabari does wind up missing some additional time due to another, injury, it could be to his benefit, right? To be able to sit there and really process and learn, hey, all right, these are the spots that I'm not taking advantage of. This is what I'm doing wrong, or I'm pressing here, I'm rushing these shots. Like, all these little things that you can study when you're not, in the game and actively, learning by doing, right? But you can take the time and really kind of be brought along a little bit more. I don't want to say brought along slowly, but just be able to focus on some of the things that you're not necessarily focusing on or picking up when you're actually in the games. So that's kind of the, recap from the game. The Rockets were kind of, they were in this game. It was a competitive game. And I even liked some of the rotations that we saw in this game, right? I mean, Stephen Silas, he still, isn't really staggering Jalen and KPJ as much as I'd probably like to see him doing it. But, he's figuring out like the end of game rotations. KPJ was at the top of the fourth quarter, and rather than, holding KPJ all the way down to the 3 or 4 minute mark, he subbed KPJ out with like 6 minutes to go in the quarter, gave him like a quick 2-minute breather, let him come back in to close out the game. So like the substitution patterns were a little bit better this time around. I didn't necessarily like that, Jalen got sat when he did because Jalen was cooking in the third quarter, and maybe it would have been better to kind of flip the substitution pattern a little bit and let Jalen stay in and let Jalen keep cooking rather than just sticking to some arbitrary, like, all right, well, I'm going to sit Jalen so that he can get his rest and then he can come back and, like, I don't know. Some of that is like, again, those in-game management decisions are still a little questionable from Stephen Silas, but there was a quote pregame. Kelly Iko asked Stephen Silas a question about the importance of Eric Gordon, and Silas's answer was pretty interesting. So let's hear from Silas.
He's very important because he can be a primary ball handler at times. So when Jalen's on the floor, it has to be either Eric or Nix, right? Like I can't have Jalen out there with, say, Josh and Garrison because we just need a ball handler on the floor. So yeah, that's staggering. Eric is in the mix because of his ability, just because he's so versatile. I mean, he can initiate offense, he can end offense, he can defend everybody on the floor on the other end, but he's a big part of everything we do, not just the staggering of those guys.
So, I would have been ready to walk away after this game if this pregame quote had not come out and been like, yeah, things are looking better, getting LP more touches, Rockets being more intentional with some of their offensive sets, drawing some unique stuff up. Jalen Green breaks out of his shooting slump, competitive games against the Clippers, even though they're, undermanned. John Wall did not get his revenge game against the Rockets. But man, not viewing Jalen Green as a primary ball handler is a hard sell for me. Especially because he brings the ball up like half the time he's in the game anyways, right? Like, I mean, when KPJ and Jalen are sharing the floor, they both take turns initiating the offense, right? They'll both bring the ball up and then initiate that little like 3-man weave that the Rockets do on the perimeter, and that's that. So, I mean, what exactly is the distinction of primary ball handler, right? Is that simply just the guy who walks the ball up the court? Because yes, Jalen Green can absolutely do that. Like, what? That's not hard. If it means like actually running and orchestrating the offense, well, how much of that does KPJ actually do, right? Like KPJ is not walking the ball up and like calling set designs and like telling people where to be and what to do, and like at least it's not happening consistently. So, and then where I take, where it gets really murky is then highlighting Daishen Nix and Eric Gordon as examples of primary ball handlers, as opposed to Jalen Green, right? Saying that one of those guys needs to be on the floor with Jalen. I can see the argument that, Jalen it makes sense to have like a secondary ball handler on the floor with Jalen so that he's not the only guy handling the rock and defenses are keying in on him, whatever. That would have been perfectly acceptable. But to basically say that like Jae'Sean or Eric have to be out there because Jalen can't handle the ball by himself, which is more or less what that quote kind of alluded to, that had me scratching my head like crazy. And again, I don't want to say it's like indefensible, but it's confusing, right? Like you've got a star 2-guard prospect who has shown time and time again that with the ball in his hands, he can make things happen offensively, right? I don't know if Jalen's ever going to be that kind of guy that you just give the ball to and let him run, a heliocentric offense or just give him the ball and say, all right, go generate stuff. There's definitely opportunities where you want to get Jalen off the ball and you want to have somebody else who can handle and set him up, right? But I don't know if those guys are Jae'Sean and Eric, and I don't know if having those guys on the floor actually really does much of anything to help Jalen be in a better position right now. If you had like an actual like better point guard product on this team, like again, even last season, we saw it with Dennis Schroeder, right? Dennis Schroeder made Jalen look really good at times. If you had a Ricky Rubio type, right? If you had somebody who was a bit more of a seasoned veteran point guard to initiate offense, to get guys in their right spots, whatever, then hell yeah, I'd be all for it. Make Jalen a secondary ball handler, right? There's no reason for him to be the lead guard when you've got somebody else who can set him up, right? And he's already not the lead guard when KPJ's out there because KPJ handles the rock the majority of the time. But again, the question was just about Eric Gordon's importance, and it was basically Eric Gordon is a primary ball handler for us. And it showed that Silas is kind of working with the idea of staggering those three guys together, right? Staggering KPJ, Jalen, and Eric. It's not just about staggering KPJ and Jalen with their minutes. Silas is also viewing Eric in that trio of guys and figuring out how to stagger all three of them for better or for worse. Again, I don't really agree with that. I don't really agree with the idea that Jalen can't handle a basketball, and I don't agree with the fact that Jae'Sean Nix or Eric Gordon, one of those two guys, have to be out there when Jalen is on the floor. Again, I do think that secondary ball handler out there so that defenses can't completely key in on Jalen, absolutely. Can Jalen not be a primary ball handler? Not a chance in hell. Run the offense through Jalen. Let him have some cracks at it. Why not, right? This year's about development. Why not just see it, right? Like, that's what they spent the entire last year basically giving the ball to Kevin Porter Jr. and saying, hey, we're just going to roll it out there and see what KPJ can do with it. We're trying to make him a point guard. I'm not saying sit here and try and make Jalen Green a point guard, but what harm does it do to have moments in the game where you just give Jalen the ball and say, all right, go get it, go do something, right? Because they're already kind of doing that, but they're doing it with other guys who are not nearly as complimentary to his game on the floor. Like, again, a Jae'Sean Nix, who he did shoot 4 of 6 from 3 in this game, so like I'll give him that. But right, if you give Jalen like a lineup where it's just him out there and like 4 non-shooters, then you're setting Jalen up for failure anyways, because then he has no spacing to work with. He doesn't have guys to kick the ball out to. If you give Jalen a lineup with 4 shooters around him where he can kick the ball out off of a drive and try to make something happen that way, give him a good screener, 3 shooters, Jalen can make things happen. As the primary ball handler, I absolutely 110% believe that to my core. So this was a very interesting quote by Stephen Silas. And again, Rockets fans were rubbed quite the wrong way by this. It remains to be seen, right? Maybe we'll see more of it. Maybe we'll see KPJ and Jalen Green start to be staggered a little bit more. I hope so. I really do, because right now the Rockets are on pace for being the worst record in the NBA yet again, the 3rd season in a row. They are 1-8 right now. I do think some of the losses have been good competitive losses, but you're still looking at the loss column and it still looks really ugly, right? And people are still going to talk, fans are still going to talk, and even players, right? If they can't break off a win at some point here soon to kind of just get away from the L mentality, the losses stacking up, 3, 4, 5 losses in a row, whatever, 10 losses, 15 losses in a row like it happened last season. If they can't get away from that and get a win to just reinforce some of the positives that they're doing, reinforce some of the lessons that the coaching staff is trying to teach them, it's not going to look great, right? Again, I know we're not looking at it from the win-loss column perspective of like evaluating what's going on, but you can look at body language, you can look at the players on the court, you can look at how bought in they are to what's going on, and it's really hard to get guys to buy in when you're taking L after L after L, right? And you look around the league, you look at teams like the OKC Thunder or the San Antonio Spurs, teams like that have young talent, and arguably less talent than the Rockets do, and they're still finding ways to win games. So it's not really an excuse. The youth is not an excuse. I don't want to hear any more excuses. This Rockets team should be able to win some of these games, right? Some of it's coming down to late game execution. Some of it's coming down to in-game management from Stephen Silas. Some of it's coming down to not being prepared from the jump and putting yourself into a hole like in this game, 23-5 to start the game. And then you got to dig your way back out of the hole and fight your way back into the game. All of that, right? The Rockets could have been up double digits in this game had they not put themselves in that hole to begin with. So there's a lot of issues facing this Rockets team. Kevin Porter Jr., when he spoke to the media, though, he wasn't fazed by it, right? He basically said, look, teams go through trials all the time. We hope that this is our only trial. When we figure it out, we're going to figure it out, and we're going to be a scary team every single night once we do figure it out. So KPJ, still frustrated by the loss, but optimistic about this team being able to get things figured out moving forward. So with that, that's going to do it for today's episode. As always, appreciate you for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, Odyssey app, free and available on all podcast platforms. We're also on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search Locked on Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. What was your favorite part from this Rockets game? Was it Alperen Sengun's 26-13? Was it Jalen Green breaking out of his shooting slump? Was it the custodians off the bench, Usman, Garuba, Tari, Eason? Let me know in the YouTube comments. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We look forward to having you back right here at Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.